What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bird Flock podcast. As you guys know, home of your 2023 Grey Cup champion, Montreal Alouettes. Shayne, I don't know about you. I'm still buzzing. It's been well over a week now, inching in towards 2 weeks, and I'm buzzing still.
Yeah, I'm still humming it, and that intro just doesn't. I don't think it's ever going to get old.
No.
Hearing the 2023 Grey Cup
Buddy, it's
champ.
gonna be 2028, and I'm gonna start an episode of the Bird Flock saying, "Welcome back, home of the 2023 Grey Cup champ, Montreal
It's
Alouettes."
always going to give me chills, man.
I know. Fuck. Well, we got a special one for you guys today. It's our way too early free agency special. Obviously, as we know, as one season comes to a close, in football especially, another one opens up very, very quickly. We're already December, which is crazy. And the free agency window for the CFL opens up this year on February 13th. And then the 1 week before that is the negotiation window, which is where we saw a lot of the big names fall last year. Obviously, with the situation Montreal was in last year, we didn't see a lot of updates until the window was actually open and things became official. That's when Cody signed. That's when Greg Ellingson came in. That's when Justin Lawrence came in, all within a 20-minute span, pretty much. When Danny got the checkbook back from his dad, basically. But yeah, the Owls obviously have some fairly big names on the board. Shayner, I don't know, just quickly, we'll go over the list one by one here, position by position. But before we get started, any thoughts on just free agency in general?
I just want to say, and this might be a hot take, because it's cool, like seeing in the negotiation period, like seeing the names when they sign. But that 20-minute period was part of the most electric 20-minute periods of my life. I remember being in Florida, and you just kept hitting me with guys that were coming in. So I like the negotiation period, but finding out that the boys signed when it was official was an electric period for me. But free agency, obviously, last year was tough seeing a bunch of guys leave. I don't think it's going to be the same situation this year, especially obviously coming off the Grey Cup. These guys are going to want to try and run it back. So looking forward, obviously it's very early, but looking forward to the new names brought in. There's definitely going to be new names. There's going to be switches. You're not going to have the same guys on the roster no matter what in back-to-back years. So excited to see what happens, even though it's very early.
I don't know. According to Danny Mac, he said it at the presser yesterday. Everyone wants to come back. I don't know if you saw that, but he
I
said,
did. But like I said, it's tough to keep every single person.
yeah.
You sit there and obviously you want the guys back, but money's got to work. And some of these guys were on contracts that are definitely not going to be signing again this year. You look at a guy like Bev, who's really stepped in and played linebacker this year instead of special teams. I don't think he's coming back for the same money that he was coming back for last year. And no, yeah, you're right. He absolutely shouldn't.
Yeah, 100%. Like we're fans of the team, but I think being so connected to the players and seeing the players and talking to the players, I want these guys to get fucking paid, man. Like I want the team to succeed. I'd love if they took some team friendly deals, but I want to see what my dogs get paid for sure. But yeah, making that comment that Machocha said at the press conference yesterday, which by the way was great. Just all the info we got from Mark Waitman and just the staff in general, just about how great this season was from a ticket sales perspective, and all that, and how much they've benefited from the Grey Cup win, obviously. But since the Grey Cup, they've had 800 new season ticket holders, which is wild. That's insane. Like 24% increase in ticket sales year over year. They sold more merch the day after the Grey Cup than they did in the last year and a half, which is crazy. Mine's coming in the mail soon. I'm excited for that. And I got confirmation that something else is shipped. It shipped on Wednesday.
No.
And it's a piece and a half, ladies and gentlemen, especially after the Grey Cup that this guy had. It is coming in the mail.
Finally coming. Let's go.
I'm not going to tell you guys. If you guys follow us on Instagram, you've seen us posted on Instagram when I actually acquired the item. But no, I got confirmation that it's in the mail right now, and it should be here tomorrow. So I'm fired up for that. But yeah, just speaking to what Machochik's comment was of everyone wants to be back. I don't think I've ever heard a GM say that in any sports setting ever, especially a football team with 52 guys on the roster with 25 plus pending free agents. It's a big thing to say, and I think it just speaks to the culture that we've built here in Montreal. Not we, but that
Especially a
Montreal has
team that
built.
wasn't supposed to be here. So
Especially a team that
I'm
wasn't
gonna
supposed to
keep
be here.
throwing that in all off season.
100%. It's just crazy, and it makes me so excited for next year. Like they said last year, they said this year, they're on a 5-year plan right now. Imagine winning the Grey Cup on year one of your 5-year plan. Like how much that accelerates your process. And I don't think it was a 5-year plan for the team and things like that and building the team. I think it's as an organization, as a franchise, they had to put together a 5-year plan to make sure that this ship stays floating, right? Because there's been some scary times in Montreal with the football team. We've lost this team a few times already, and I think no one wants that to happen again. So I'm just really excited to see the kind of steps that they're putting into place, and obviously this Grey Cup victory is just going to accelerate that process so much.
Yeah, I think it's a given when you see a team succeed, you kind of want to jump on the bandwagon, I guess, and not saying that that's what people are doing, but there's obviously some that are. Obviously, seeing season tickets go up, the presence that the players have talked about in some of the interviews with us, and how they feed off the crowd, especially in Montreal, and on those nights where sometimes it might be tough to get up for a game. Feeding off the crowd, especially late in the quarter, just adding more fans to the stadium's going to help them feed off the energy more. And like we've talked about, the way that the stadium came to life this year, like we hadn't seen it before, especially late in the fourth quarter on Friday, Saturday nights when all the phones were out and the crowd was buzzing. That's going to be massive, and the vibe in the stadium is only going to keep getting better if the more this team succeeds. And there's no turning back now. You like you said, you won the Grey Cup in year one of your 5-year plan. You're obviously, unfortunately, I hate to say, you're not going to win it every year in your 5-year plan. I mean, hopefully you do, but let's be realistic. So it's just about fielding a competitive team, a team that week in and week out can win any given week.
100%, 100%. And I think the more money this team brings in, the higher the likelihood here we get a new stadium.
That would be massive.
I would love that. Also, just quickly in stadium news, the Owls announced last year that there's going to be a new jumbotron in the end zone, and they said yesterday that it's coming from Asia, and there was a bunch of delays and things like that, and it never made its way here last year. But it's officially scheduled to be installed this offseason. So week 1 of next year, or whenever the Owls play their first game next year, we will have a brand new jumbotron in the end zone, because that one needed replacing for sure. And apparently we got something real nice coming.
We also got a banner coming, in case you forgot.
Also got a banner coming. Fired up for that. Fired up for that. Might need to make the jumbotron a little smaller to fit that new banner. So really quickly here, Shane, you mentioned before, obviously coming off a Grey Cup win, your goal, you want to keep the nucleus together. And I think Danny Machocha touched on that really well in the press conference. You want to keep the core guys together. You want to keep as many guys together from this squad as possible. But before we get into our pending free agents, you mentioned that there's obviously going to be new names, and we're fired up for new names to come in. So the CFL released their list of the top 30 free agents. I'm going to go through them 10 at a time, and then we'll handle this quickly. Any names that jump off the board for you that you want to touch on a little bit more, we'll stop and touch on those a little bit more. So let's go 30 through 21 here. So number 30, Jamal Peters from Toronto. Number 29, Sean Oakman from Toronto. Number 28, Sean Lemon. Number 27, Drew Brown. Number 26, Jamarcus Hardrick from Winnipeg. Number 25, Jameer Thurman. 24, Sean Bain Jr. 23, Justin Hardy from Ottawa. 22, Stavros Katsatonis from Hamilton. And 21, Javon Leake from Toronto. Any names jump off that board for you?
I mean, obviously the first name that jumps off is our own guy there. Sean Lemon, obviously we've touched on him. I've talked about it every episode, I think, since he signed his impact, since he came here. Obviously he's one of those guys, I think, Obviously an older guy, but one of the guys I think has to be part of the answer and the nucleus for at least the next 2 years, in my opinion. Um,
We'll
you
get into
know,
that a little later, though.
yeah, for sure. I think the next name that kind of jumps off the board first is Jamarcus Hardrick and what he's done in his career, and everyone's kind of complained about the O line and keeping Cody protected, and that's a big name in the CFL at a position that we had two guys start at this year in Rice and McGloster. Um,
Big
two
caliber.
guys that were good, but if you could get a big name like that in here, that would be massive.
Absolutely. I agree. I think out of these 10, Hardrick is definitely the name that pops off. And then not one for the Alouettes, but just the name I'm really excited to see is Drew Brown. I think it's safe to say he'll be a starting quarterback in the CFL next year, or will go into camp to compete for a job somewhere for that starting job. So I'm really excited to see that. Um, and then obviously someone like Jamal Peters, I don't think is really what the Alouettes need to be after at this point. He's a great defensive back. He was, unreal 2 years ago as well. But for me, jumping in now to 20 through 11, there's some big names here. So Demario Houston out of Winnipeg, Brendan Dandridge out of Ottawa, Ben Wladek out of BC, Winton McManus out of Toronto, Tyrese Beverett, Brandon Ravenberg from Hamilton. We're missing one here. Willie Jefferson, Alexander Hollins, Darius Sirocco, and AC Leonard.
Going through that once again, I mean your own guy in Bev, but like we said, we'll get to that later. I think a guy like McManus kind of steps up and the leadership he showed in Toronto, and that kind of depends on your own situation. Is Sankey coming back? He's the ideal replacement, I think, if Sankey does walk out the door, in my mind. But I think you have to look at a guy like Demario Houston.
Yep.
I don't know what they're gonna do on the outside there. Are they gonna go with Rogers and Ento, which is we saw it couldn't be successful. Is Ruffin gonna come back? We don't know. Depends how comfortable you are with that position. I think Rogers and Ento and Ruffin did a very good job this year. But if you're looking to upgrade, Demario Houston's been a big name in the CFL for the last couple of years, and he's a guy that I think Montreal should be going after to bolster Northorpe's defense late in the season.
Absolutely. Shane, you're taking the words out of my mouth here. The only other one I'll touch on is Willie Jefferson. Not because I think he's a big need for Montreal or would even be a great fit in Montreal. I think he would be, but because he's the type of player that'll go in and make an impact anywhere, kind of like what we saw with Sean Lemon.
I think he's just the first ballot Hall of Famer.
100%. He's a zero ballot Hall of Famer. He doesn't even need to retire. They should put him in the Hall of Fame while he's still playing. But just the fact that Willie Jefferson's on this list, and there's some guys down the list here as well. It seems like we're finally going to see.
Also, the fact that he's not top 10 is wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He should have been one. I don't care who is one.
That is crazy. But anyways, it's just crazy that we're finally seeing the band breaking up in Winnipeg. I think you knew it was coming. You felt that, especially if they didn't get it done this year, that it was definitely not a hit the reset button completely, but it's going to be a reload for sure. And they're going to lose guys like Willie Jefferson. They're going to lose guys like Demario Houston, like some other guys that we haven't even named yet on this list. But yeah, we're finally seeing kind of the explosion of that nucleus in Winnipeg. Now, into the top 10 here, we have a former Montreal Alouette in Micah Awe, who had an unreal 2023. We saw him in Montreal. He was always a player. He was in on every play. He was exactly what you want out of an interior linebacker, I would say. He was just all over the place. Number 8, another former Alouette here.
Man,
Darius Pickett, pick 6 Pickett, my guy. Number 7, somehow not Quebecois, AJ Willette. Thought for sure he was Quebecois. Number 6, Keon Hatcher. Number 5, the boy Darnell Sankey. Number 4 is a big name.
Massive name.
Dalton Schoen. 3, another huge name. Tim White. 2, Matthew Betts. and one Brady Oliveira, the most outstanding Canadian from 2023.
Yeah, I think a name I'm going to touch on, and in the top 10, no one really stands out to me as a fit in Montreal. If we're bringing back our guys here, except for Sankey, obviously our guy that we want to bring back.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to touch on Dawson and Shayne, and I think that's got to be priority number one for Winnipeg. I get the defense has been outstanding, but if he's not the first free agent signed in Winnipeg, I would be shocked. That's Caleros' guy. He came in, he was, rookie of the year, was outstanding. Was a big reason that they didn't get a lot of offense generated really against the Alouettes in the Grey Cup because of his injury. To me, I think he's got to be the first guy off the board. Number two, Matthew Betts is kind of the only guy I see as a fit in Montreal. Laval product. Does he want to come back to his home province and play for a team I would assume that he cheered for growing up? I don't know.
He was a Montreal boy. He went to CVM.
Yeah, so I'm gonna assume, I'm not gonna speak for him. I don't know him that well. If he grew up an Als fan, I'm just gonna assume he was growing up here. But yeah, I think if Lemon does happen to walk out the door, you got to throw a bag at Matthew Betts. And so what he did this year, he was unstoppable. Just off the edge, he was insane, and he's obviously younger than Sean Lemon. And if you want to go that route, and have two young pass rushers in him and Lawal Ugwak, then throw the bag at Matthew Betts and hope to God he comes over here.
Yeah, I mean, the name that jumped off of here for me was number 2, Matthew Betts, 100%. A guy who wasn't really given a fair shot at his first landing spot in Edmonton, and didn't blow up until this year, really, in BC, and has proven to be one of, if not the most dominant defensive player in the CFL. But you said if Sean Lemon happens to find his way to walk out the door and things like that, I think that there is honestly a world where Ugwak, Lemon, and Matthew Betts are in a 3-man rotation at the end.
That would be insane.
I think there's a world in which that can happen. Obviously, it's going to come with sacrifices on other parts of the ball too, right? That could mean, maybe Sankey doesn't come back or something like that. It could definitely mean that because the money's got to come from somewhere. But and who the fuck am I to doubt Sean Lemon? But he's going to be 35 or 36 years old this year, I think. I could be totally aging him, and I'm so sorry if you're not 35 or 36, but I don't think I'm far off with that number. And Sean Lemon was amazing this year, but we also have to
35.
He's turning 35?
He's currently 35.
Oh my God. Yeah, I got you, bro. So there is a world, right? Sean Lemon was amazing this year. Sean Lemon also only played half of the season, right? A 35-year-old is going to need some rest on those legs mid-season. I don't care who it is, right? Like, it could be Aaron Donald out there. A 35-year-old is going to have more wear and tear than a 20-something, without a doubt. And the Alouettes are smart. I think they realize that. And that's why I can see a world where we have a 3-man pass rush, which would be the best in the CFL, by the way, of Lawal Ugwak, Matthew Betts, and Sean Lemon with Mustafa Johnson and, I don't know, Mondo or someone down the middle. That's the best D-line in the CFL. I don't care who says it, but I think there's a world where that's possible, and that would be dream ideal scenario for me.
Yeah, I think, like you said, certain point he's not going to want to play every down. His body's just going to give up at some point, right? Most athletes do at a certain age. Didn't show signs of it this year, and I'm not assuming that it's going to happen next year. But can you just imagine how much fresher he's going to be come playoff time, in the big moments like he was this year after not playing the whole season, and adding a guy like Matthew Betts, and then you just look at Lawal Ugwak learning off of the guy that just won Defensive Player of the Year and a first ballot Hall of Famer, teaching him pass rush moves. Not that he, needs that much help based on the way he played in the second half of the season and being the first round pick, but that just two mentors like that can only expand his game. And we've seen in Montreal throughout like our lives, it's been pass rush central with Anwar Stewart and John Bowman and guys like that have come throughout our time. They're kind of building Lawal Ugwak to be the next name, I think, and having those two guys mentor him would be massive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's my dream scenario. That is my number one outside of the building target without a doubt. Last year was Cody. I got my wish, but this year I am all in on Matty Ice.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull off the performance I had last year in last
Oh
year's.
my god! Oh my god, that was freakish.
I hit
that
like
was,
8 of 10.
That was ridiculous. But yeah, so then jumping into guys we want to keep in the building. We posted a graphic over on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you don't follow us there, Bird Flock Pod, the Bird Flock Pod, just about everywhere. And that's the 2024 Alouettes pending free agents. Starting off on offense, on the offensive side of the ball, this will be a quick topic here. Quarterbacks.
0.
None. 0. Everyone's coming back. The best quarterback room in the CFL is coming back. Caleb Evans, Davis Alexander, Cody Fajardo, all under contract for 2023. I think it's also important for people to note that just because someone is under contract doesn't mean they make the team, doesn't mean they choose to come back, right? They can go try out for the NFL. They can go to the XFL. They can do just about whatever they want. So just because we're naming them now or not naming them now doesn't mean you're going to see them in week 1 next year. Hopefully we see all of them because we're coming off a Grey Cup squad, but there's obviously going to be roster shakeups throughout the season. Going over to running backs. That room is going to be lonely for Coach Terrell Sutton. Just about everyone on the roster is a free agent this offseason. Going through the list, we have fullbacks Alexandre Gagne and James Tuck. And then jumping into the actual running back room, Jeshrin Antwi, Walter Fletcher, and William Stanback are all free agents. That's tough. Because you know this 3-headed monster is not going to be back next year.
I know for a fact that one of them is not going to be back next year.
Yeah.
You know for a fact, every single one of you knows exactly what I'm talking about if you've listened to an episode.
And that doesn't mean we don't want him back. I would kill.
It's been very well documented. I am the leader of the Walter Fletcher fan club. I was very upset all season. I don't think he'll be back, and I'm going to see him play for another team, just like I did with Dominic Davis last year, and I'm going to cry every single time. Yeah. Stanback and Antwi, I feel like I can almost guarantee that they will be back in the building.
The number one I can guarantee almost, I think, is Jeshrin Antwi. Just because of how much value he has, right? He's great on special teams. Hit a few games this year with some penalties.
He's the greatest punter I've ever seen in my entire life.
The greatest punter I've ever seen in my life. But no, it's the fact that he's a national, right? For anyone who doesn't know the rules around football, the rules around roster construction in the CFL, you have to have a certain amount of Canadians on your roster on the field at all times. And there is a ridiculous amount of value obviously placed on national, so Canadian players that can stay on the field, right? That can actually go in there and be competitive. And Jeshrin Antwi is someone who can go in there and be an every down running back for you if you need to, go on special teams and make tackles and make blocks and be a great special teamer. So he has so much value. So I do not see a world where he's not back in Montreal. Obviously, you said it last week too, just the way he was acting at the parade, the way he loves this city, he loves this team. I don't see a world where he's not back. I don't see a world where Machocha doesn't reciprocate that feeling. And then William Stanback, Machocha made it very clear at the press conference, he's meeting with Stanback this week. I don't think they want this to drag out. I think he wants Willie back in the building. I don't blame him. This is the leader of the team. This is the face of Montreal football, and he will be until he retires. I think it's a no-brainer that Stanback will be back. I would be very surprised if he wasn't, and more, I'd be very sad if he wasn't, because he is still the best running back in the CFL, and I'm struggling to, Brady Oliveira is great. There's great running backs in the CFL. No one puts it together like William Stanback for me.
No, I think, Brady Oliveira, he's more of a one-dimensional back, I think, kind of ground and pound. We've seen the way, excuse me, that William Stanback can be used in the pass game and stuff like that. I'm obviously a homer and say that he's the best running back in the CFL, and I honestly believe that. He's not a guy you could let walk out the door and replace in any way, unless you're finding a way to bring in Brady Oliveira and Walter Fletcher and use them as a 2-down, 2-man rotation instead of having that one guy that could do it
I don't
all.
even want that though.
No, I mean I want William Stanback to stay. Like you said, he's the face of Montreal. You can't sit here and let the face of your football team walk out two years in a row.
Yeah. And it says a lot, right? Like it was the same thing with Gino. William Stanback is a Montrealer. He lives in Montreal. His family lives in Montreal. His kids go to school in Montreal. He is a Montrealer. And I don't think you can just let him walk like you did Gino last year. So I am very confident that Stanback will be back on. Obviously, he holds a little special place in our heart. Our first ever interview, friend of the show. So we hope nothing more than for Willie to be back next year. Receivers, a lot shorter of a list than I thought.
It's massive.
Reggie Sibasu, Greg Ellington, Jake Hardy. So Sibasu and Hardy are both nationals. Ellington is obviously American. Of this list, obviously Ellington, would love to see him run it back and actually play in Montreal. I don't think I saw him once this year. Like any game that he was potentially in, I don't think I caught him. I must have been away from the TV or something. And then Sibasu, who scored his first career touchdown this year, has been great on special teams. And honestly, a really good blocker and things like that for short yardage, and just those situations. If the Alouettes want him back, I don't see a world where he's not back. And then Jake Hardy filled in, stepped in at some times, made plays, made great catches. He's a toss-up for me. I would love to, again, I want to make it very clear. Every name I read on this list, I want back in some capacity, right? I want to run it back with the same squad. I know the reality of sports, but Jake Hardy, I just don't have enough of an opinion on to, give you guys anything more right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ellington's done in Montreal probably based on the way that the starting five balled out for us. And, there's just no room. Jake Hardy, I think he's one of those guys that's going to go somewhere else and try and get a bigger opportunity. Like I said, that starting five, the fact that none of their names are on this list is insanely massive for this team. And in the guys that I'm talking about, Snead, Philpott, Kayon, obviously Austin Mack, Reggie White is under contract. We didn't see him all year, man. Cole Speaker. So that's 6 guys right there that are locked in, and there's no really moving those guys. Sibasu though, if he wants to be back, he's going to be back. Danny, very very well known that he takes care of his Montreal boys. Like you said, a national that could play on the field at almost every down. He's gonna run it back.
100%. Jumping over to the O-line now, we have 5 nationals here. So O-line, again, just for you guys who don't know or aren't super familiar with the intricacies of this, O-line is somewhere where they try to stash a lot of national guys. That's where they want to fill a lot of national guys. Like Montreal's big Grey Cup runs in 2008, 2009, 2010 was led by 5 starting Canadian offensive linemen. That's a huge value. If you can get 5 Canadian offensive linemen that are good on the field,
unit I've ever seen in my entire life.
That is the 100%. 100%. I think it was Scott Flory, Josh Bork, Jeff Parrott, Paul Lambert, Brian Chu. Unreal.
And LBJ stepped in for Chu at some point.
Yeah. So on the O-line, we have David Brown, Philippe Gagnon, Jesse Gibbon, Christian Matt, Landon Rice. Pop option. Any names here stand out to you?
Christian Matt, I think he's a toss-up. If he wants to be back, he's going to be back. He's not going to play for another team.
No, he's going to retire or he's going to come back.
Is he going to retire? I think that's something that he's going to think long and hard about, especially, if we're sitting here and he doesn't have a ring, I think I'm going to sit here and confirm he's going to be back. Riding off into the sunset, is that something he wants to do? I think it's a high possibility. But if he wants to be back, he's going to be back. David Brown, just looking at the way that he was treated around the parade, that's a guy that they seem to all love in every person. And I think it was Justin Lawrence when we had him on said that he's a funny guy and a guy that keeps the mood light. I think that's something you need to keep around, and even if he's a reserve guy and isn't starting, it's still someone you want in the room. I think he should be back. Landon Rice had a tough year. I don't know what they're going to do with him, to be honest. Didn't start kind of the back half of the year, so that one's a toss up. If I had to guess, I would lean towards probably walking out the door.
And Landon Rice, I want to make it very clear, is going to go to another team and start somewhere.
Yeah, 100%.
If he were to leave.
Gagnon and Gibbon, I think, are a toss up. Gagnon always seems to find his way back to Montreal. He stepped in the Grey Cup for Lestage being out, so I don't see why they would let him go. Jesse Gibbon's a guy that could start all 5 positions. 4. I don't want to say he could start center, but he could start both guards and both tackle positions. Finding that kind of player is hard, so I would lean towards bringing him back, but I don't know.
And especially Jesse Gibbon is someone they traded for last year too, so they see the value.
Was also a very high first round pick when he came out not too long ago, 3-4 years ago. So I could see them bringing him back, but of the 4 or 5 that we named, I would see them probably only bringing back 2 or 3.
Yeah,
they're not going to bring back all 5.
Yeah, agreed. Jumping over to the defensive side of the ball, we have Vincent Desjardins, a national, followed by 2 Americans in Avery Ellis and Sean Lemon. Started off, Shane, I know you have quite a bit to say about Sean Lemon. We've spoken about him in pretty much every episode this season. I think he is kind of priority number 1 to bring back, not from a impact perspective, even though I think he'll have a huge impact. I think he's priority number 1 just because he is going to be an unreal mentor for the next 1, 2, 3 years potentially, for any young D linemen, any young defensive players that come through Montreal. And he's kind of made it clear he'd like to end his career here. I think he wants to end his career with Noel Thorpe under a Noel Thorpe defense. And honestly, the way this season played out and the way this defense looked, I don't blame him.
Yeah, you have him as priority 1. I have him as priority 2. Just kind of like we said, the impact if he doesn't play, if they do bring in another pass rusher, if he doesn't play every down, and keep him fresh and let him ball in the playoffs and stuff like that. But the mentorship that he could give to not only we said before Wall Ugwak, but other guys like Mustafa Johnson and whatever other pass rushers Montreal brings in, having a guy like that in the locker room is massive. And again, being at the parade, you could see how much these guys look up to him and how much they were talking to him and how excited he seemed to be in Montreal. So running it back with him, I think, would be massive. Like I said, your priority 1, my priority 2. So he's got to run it back.
And Shaner, I think your priority number 2 or number 1 is in this next position group we're talking about, is it not?
It is.
So going over to the linebackers, this is a tough list to look at. 3 Americans in Tyrese Beverett, Darnell Sankey, and Avery Williams, followed by a national, Fred Chagnon, who started several games this year as well. Shane, walk me through this list a little bit.
I think, listen, I talked about number 2. I'm going to talk about number 3, and that's Bev. You can't let him and Reggie were just so massive and bringing blitzes off the edge that I think they need to run it back. Reggie's obviously back under contract, luckily for us, but Bev is a guy that you can't let walk out the door, and he's going to earn a massive paycheck, way more than he was making. So it's Montreal's got to throw a bag at him, I think, and
100%.
Hopefully convince him to stay, because he's not a guy that's easily fixable, and a position that you can throw someone else in, expecting the same type of production. Then it comes between Sankey and Williams. I think you have to keep one of them. You can't keep both. It just doesn't make sense, not only financially, but just the fact that you're going to take one off the field most of the time anyways, and that was Avery Williams. But Sankey's my priority 1. Just the leader in the locker room. He played with 2 young players in the position, in the linebacking core, in Bev and Reggie, and he was really that stabilizer and the leader that Montreal needed on the back end. I know they have Dequoy, but Dequoy doesn't seem like the most vocal guy.
Oh no, he doesn't.
No, kind of
outside of press conferences.
Kind of a guy that leads by example, and Sankey is one of those guys that could get you fired up and can get you ready to run through a wall, including us. So I think Sankey is that stabilizer that Montreal needs, and you saw the way the defense turned when he signed, and just the way he came in and said, you know what, we're not going to lose another game, and we're going to win the Grey Cup. Shows the leader that he is, and everyone bought in. But again, 2 young guys beside him, and he stabilized it. He's the guy that needs to be back in Montreal. If I had to choose one of the top 3 that I named, he's priority 1. He needs to be back in Montreal 100%.
Absolutely. And then over to the defensive back room, Shayner, I know you're going to have some passion for one of these guys too, and I will with you. 3 Americans on this list: Nafis Lyon, who was amazing at the beginning of the year, amazing at the end of last year. Ciante Evans, who came in this year, came back to Montreal, and then Najee Murray.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said before, the linebacker room is between Avery Williams and Sankey in the middle of the defense, and I think it's the same thing for the DB room between Ciante and Najee. 2 guys that you can't afford to pay both, especially like we've been talking about, guys that are gonna get big pay raises. Najee Murray is the guy, to me, you have to keep. He's a guy that could play linebacker too. If Bev or Reggie, God forbid, go down, like we saw him before Reggie kind of stepped in and took his role in the outside linebacker position. And he was leading the team in tackles and was a top 3 in the CFL in tackles at the time he went down. He was massive for the defense in his first year playing linebacker in the CFL. Guys like that, guys with versatility, are guys you want in the CFL. Ciante could play inside or outside. He's mostly a halfback, doesn't really play outside corner too much, and he definitely doesn't play linebacker. So you definitely need to keep the guy that could play all 3 of those positions. And that's Najee Murray, and that's probably another guy that was getting ready to get a big paycheck before he got hurt. So I don't know how that contract's going to look now. It's still going to be kind of a big bump in his salary, but not as big as it probably would have been had he played the whole year. But people are forgetting how big he was for this defense because he didn't play the back year.
He was unbelievable.
He was well on his way to a Defensive Player of the Year nomination in my mind, and not a guy you can let walk out, because there's going to be 8 other teams sitting there throwing a bag at him, hoping to God that he goes there.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think it's exciting, right? There's a reason you and I fell in love with his game 2 years ago, and that was his play on defense, right? At DB, sorry. And I think with the emergence of Reggie Stubblefield becoming an unbelievable outside backer, and
he's not a guy you can move.
No, the way he played at the end of the year, you can't move him for anyone. And then obviously Bev on the other side, you're going to be able to see Najee go and play corner probably, or play half. And it's a position he thrived in 2 years ago. So I'm fired up for him to get that opportunity to go back to the position where he's most comfortable. And obviously, like, if he plays halfback, having him, Bev, Reggie, and Darnell Sankey in the middle of the field somewhat is unbelievable. Like, that's an unreal.
And if you look at how Noel Thorpe runs his defense and how many blitzes he brings up from this halfback and outside linebackers, you're looking at combinations of Wesley Sutton, Najee Murray, Reggie Stubblefield, and Tyrese Beverett coming off the edge at some point, along with Sean Lemon and Lawal Ugwak.
And Matthew Betts.
And hopefully Matthew Betts. But this is a team that was starving for sacks right up to the point until Sean Lemon signed. And now you're looking at guys that fly off the edge and hit the quarterback on every play. It's something that can't be overlooked. And Najee better have a contract with the Montreal Alouettes going into next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. So that kind of does it. Obviously, the specialists, we're not looking at any changes there. We should expect any combination of Joseph Zima, David Cote, and Bourassa at long snapper. So not many changes anticipated there. All great guys who I would have no problem seeing them strap up next year. Shayner here, any closing remarks as we end this episode here? We obviously have some great interviews coming, some great episodes coming, but anything related to free agency that you kind of wanted to get off your chest here?
It's going to be a long, stressful 2 months based on, seeing who he's going to sign. And there's going to be new faces like we did last year with all these, college kids that could be signed. And, guys
Austin
like
Mack.
hopefully there's another Reggie Stubblefield somewhere in there that's brought to Montreal. And like you said, at Austin Mack. There's going to be names that we're not even talking about right now that have never stepped foot on the CFL field or in Canada that are going to come and hopefully ball out here too. So, in Danny Mack, we trust. It's going to be a stressful 2 months, but I just, is it June yet? That's all I want to know.
Absolutely. I forget June. Is it February yet? Is it February 13th yet? I want some new names and some new faces. I want to interview some new Alouettes. I'm fired up for that. Obviously, last year we had the privilege of speaking to just about everyone that signed and came in, which was awesome. Can't wait to do it again this year, and obviously can't wait to bring you guys all off season, interviews with your favorite players from this past year. We have some awesome interviews dropping. We might have an interview to do right after this with a fan favorite. But as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And this was the Bird Flock. The official not the official podcast, sorry. A podcast of your 2023 Grey Cup champion Montreal Alouettes.